Okay. All right. So we are here at Unscripted. It's an opportunity, as always, to celebrate the beauty and boldness of Black creatives. I'm joined by two phenomenal Black creatives today. I'm really, really excited for the opportunity to talk to the two of you. And really chop it up and see what we get to. I'm excited because I think we're gonna get to some places we didn't expect to, but it's gonna be really, really good. So, as part of Unscripted, I will be introducing these phenomenal folks, and then we'll get into some conversation and we will end it out with our affirmation manifestation lines that Christina and Maurisa, you will be sharing for us. So let's get started. I'm going to start with Dr. Morton over here, who is a postdoctoral research fellow at the National Center for Institutional Diversity at the University of Michigan. She earned her doctorate in higher education from the University of Michigan, and her work explores how cultural resources such as spirituality, contribute to the success of students of color in STEM. Her poetry is a reflection of her standpoint as a Black woman, a scholar, a mother, a lover, sister, daughter, friend, and spirit being. The stories she chooses to tell are often from her own experience or the experiences of those around her. And Christina conducts research on Black people's lived experiences, which allows her to blend her artistry with her scholarship and share her research findings through poetry. Anything you want to add to that, Christina, before we?
I'm feeling it. I'm here. That
All
was
right.
beautiful. Thank
Okay, all right. And then we have Maurisa Liuping, my wonderful friend, who is a writer and educator raised by a single Caribbean mother in Brooklyn, New York. Bop, 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 bop. Her commitment to poetry and higher education can be seen through her publications in Puerto del Sol, Up the Staircase Quarterly, celebrating 20 years of Black girlhood, The Lauryn Hill Reader, and many others. She earns a Master of Science in Education and Higher Education and Student Affairs and is a current MFA candidate at Randolph College. Maurisa currently has a piece featured in Unwritten, which is on reimagineproject.com, and it's part of the Reimagine platform. And so, of course, we invite you to check out that piece. It's about reimagining accountability. I believe the title is What Girls I See.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So that's the piece that is in there, and I would love for you to share a little bit more about that later on. But those are the two phenomenal Black creatives that I am joined with here today. So it's an absolute honor. So, Marissa, did you have anything you wanted to add to
Oh, that
your
was
intro?
great. Thank you.
Okay. So, to start off, for the both of you, I would love for you to talk a little bit about when you both discovered your love for storytelling and for poetry.
What a great question. um, I mean, I think I always knew, I've been writing poetry since I was a little girl. I would like walk. My mom would send me to the supermarket and I would like be writing poems on receipts or on my hands, like while I'm walking, trying to like get the thought out. I didn't have pride in my poems at that time. But I think a part of me has always been like seeing something and like wondering what if, right? Making a story, wanting to hear I ask a lot of questions and my family says like I'm very curious. But I think that's like the storyteller in me that's like I want to gather these details so that I can kind of see the full picture or create that full picture. So I think it was from a young girl that's when I knew that like okay, this is a thing, that I really enjoy. And then when I kind of committed my life to it was I stopped writing when I was in undergrad and grad school because I felt like I had to be focused on academia, which felt very different from my art. But poetry was kind of like, oh, you tried it, like this is the call, right? um and it was so hard to have to read these academic books and then try to do poetry stuff, and I found a way to just intersect it. So I think in grad school is when I like was like, okay,
Mm.
whether I like it or not, like this is the calling. And this is something that I want to kind of learn more about and commit my life to.
Mhm.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And I'm glad that I got the grad school experience.
Yes.
Christina, we were at IU together.
Oh,
Maurisa was 1 year ahead of me. And so I got the poetry, like leaning into the artistry, Maurisa. I'm
Yes.
glad that I got.
I
It's
love
not
it.
always like that, but I'm so grateful. That's what you jumped in on. What about you, Christina?
Oh my gosh. Just listening to you, I can relate so closely. I feel like the artistry in me is so deeply rooted in my family.
Mhm.
So I have a big sister. Her name is Charlene. Hey Charlene, I love you, girl. She was writing poems for school and little projects and things like that. And I think one of the first poems that I wrote was trying to emulate something she created. And so her poem might have been like the tree, and mine was like the branch. I was like, I just want to be, I just want to be so close. But it took off from there. Like after a while, it stopped being me trying to emulate and me wanting to create my own, worlds, just let my imagination kind of go. And as far as, storytelling, I've always loved stories. My dad, he like really instilled the love of books, reading, stories, anything into us. So I was always like, can I just read this real quick? Hold on, I just got to finish this chapter real quick. Um, and so then came a time where I was like, I really want to create these things. And I would have like dialogue going in my head. And so, like Maurisa, I would be kind of off in the corner, like, and then he said, and then after that, she said, and then and my mom was like, what are you writing? I'm like, it's a whole play. I'm gonna show you later. It's bomb. So I feel like it's been there for a long time. And, also similar to what you were saying, Marissa, I felt like there was this hiatus in my writing where, I don't know what really caused it, but I just felt like I didn't have anything that I wanted to say. And then in grad school, suddenly it was just like, okay, you cannot leave this alone. Your poetry is about to come out. You have so much that you've been bottling up inside that, yeah, you clearly had something to say, but you just weren't ready to say it yet. And it kind of just burst forth really in grad school. And it's been going ever since. Oh.
I
What is
love
it about the grad school experience that
that.
it burst out for the two of you? What do you think that was?
I wanted to circle back on what Christina said about like that family connection. I think that's really true because I always tell people, my mom is like one of my biggest influences. So I'm West Indian and Caribbean. And I don't know if you ever heard like a West Indian person tell a story, but like the
Mm.
drama, the theatrics, the voice, the she did, like it's just like all the drama. And I think that the way that that oral tradition of like telling stories and the way that, I grew up hearing language is very different from the language I learned in academia. And I'm actually really fascinated by the way that my family talks and the way that we use language. So that was always interesting to me. And my mom told me, like, when she was younger, she would write poems, and my mom's very like creative. My sister sings, like, everyone kind of does like some kind of like creative thing. Um, so I think that family influence, and I mean like just being black, right? Like having storytellers, having oral tradition like run through our veins. So I really appreciate you bringing up that point. I don't know about the grad school thing. I'll let you take a spin on that.
Oh man. I think part of it for me was I was really trying to figure out who I wanted to be in my program. And, it's interesting as a Black woman navigating a primarily white space, right? There were moments where I was like, okay, I know who I am, but is that who I'm portraying myself to be, when I'm here? And do any of these people actually know me? Do they really see me? Do they really hear me when I speak? Um, and I would find myself, if I'm in a circle of people, maybe I'm saying one thing, but I'm really thinking something else entirely. And my poetry became this outlet for me to actually get those thoughts and that authentic self out, because she was screaming.
Mhm.
She was screaming in my poem, like, you are struggling trying to fit or, just get by. And I was like, you're not doing well, baby. You're not doing well. Like, you have to let this part out. And I felt like I could fully express myself through poetry. Um, and I will also say, I also had an invitation to do that from one of my mentors and teachers, Dr. Jackie Matisse. I was in a class with her, and she was like, do something that brings you joy. I don't know, we might grade it, we might not, but you do something. Like, y'all are just looking sad and tired. Like, do something for yourself. That's your homework assignment. And I wrote a poem.
Mm.
So, we know what we need.
Yeah. I love how that little moment of like them permissioning you gave you like
Yeah.
this space for you to permission yourself to be like, oh, bet, like I'm gonna do the thing that I love all day, every day now,
Mhm.
right? I don't know what it was about grad school. I did slam poetry a lot growing up when I was younger, and I did theater and all these other things, and it was really easy to like. I mean, I even had like a stage name. It was really easy to have like that part of my life and then like the other part of my life. And I think when you get older and when you go to grad school, it just becomes harder and harder to compartmentalize everything. Um, Particularly when you go to grad school in a college town. I'm from New York City, where like is a small world, but it's a real big world, right? So when you're in a small town, it's just like people are seeing me at the open mic and they're like, oh, that's London, right? But then they're seeing me in class and they're like, oh, that's Maurisa. And I'm just like, who am I? Similarly. But you get to a point where like you just got to step up to the call. And I don't know how more to explain that, but something keeps pulling at you that's like, this is the thing that you love. And I think also like academia has gaps, right? And I was reading these research papers and I was like, oh, there's a poem that says this. Oh,
Mm.
there's like a performance that says this, right? But that wasn't valued as scholarship. And I didn't understand like why the written word was more valued, particularly in this like certain kind of jargon. Um,
Mhm.
and I just became curious about that. I didn't really know what I was doing. I just kind of let curiosity lead me.
Mm.
And I'm still letting curiosity lead me kind of today.
Yeah.
Marissa, when you said compartmentalize, I was like, yes. Yeah. Like, did you see me? Did you know? That was that. I
Yes.
mean, it was just so appropriate, and like, it was visceral when you use that word, because I felt like that's what I was trying to do in grad school. I was trying to compartmentalize. I was like, okay, this is the Christina for my family. This is Christina in my household. This is Christina at school. And this is creative Christina. And it was just like, girl, you don't have time to be opening and closing all these different boxes. You just you.
Yeah.
And like, how can you just be you and be a version of yourself that you can recognize and the people who love you can recognize, no matter where I'm at or what I'm doing. And it
Mhm.
was like, yeah, you got to let the creative out. Just got to let it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would, so it sounds like that journey for the two of you allowed you to feel like you were being more authentic to yourselves. But how would you, this is a struggle that a lot of people have, right? Like, what does it even mean to be authentic, right? This idea of authenticity is a hot topic. But what for you two, what do you, how do you define authenticity? Like, what does that look like in particularly amongst Black women? Like, what do you feel authenticity needs in order to thrive? What does that look like?
Mm.
Mm.
I think for me, when I think about being my authentic self, it's about alignment, you know? when I feel aligned mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, there's a clarity that comes, right? I mean, there's no denying or hiding the divine spark that's within me, right? That light is going to radiate no matter where I'm at, no matter what I'm doing. And there's just this focus, right? So even now, like as I'm speaking, I feel that alignment that I get, right? When I'm being my true self, when I'm speaking my truth, when I'm allowing people to see me. And I think that, yeah, it's absolutely a difficult thing to do, um, when you don't feel safe or when you feel like you're under attack, or that people won't appreciate or value what it is that you bring. But I feel like now that I'm getting more mature in that and more accustomed to just showing up as I am, um, I've gotten stronger. And I'm like, listen, I couldn't put it back in if I tried. You know, it's like once it's all the way out there, it's out there now. Like it's gonna be real hard to try to shove it back in those different compartments that I used to have. It doesn't fit anymore. So I'll stop there.
I really, oh my God, when you said safety, right? Not being attacked. If I don't feel safe, I'm like, ooh,
Mm.
like shut down, right?
Mm,
And I don't think that that's not an authentic version of me. So I want to really complicate authenticity. Like when I walk into a room and I'm like, whoop, like that's still me being me. That's authentically me protecting myself for in this space. Um, and I think like Black girls and Black women are so are under attack, right? And then if we even get into like trans Black women, which is so different, like
yeah.
absolutely under attack. So it's like authenticity is like, oh, at what cost will this come? So I definitely feel you on that, Christina. I can't speak for others, but I'll say for myself, I think my key to authenticity is literally me like permissioning myself. Just saying, like, no one needs to give you permission. Only person who needs to give you permission, if anybody, is myself to be myself. Um,
Mhm.
and I realized that like when I'm my most authentic self, it feels free. I don't feel heavy, you just feel good. And then when I'm being my authentic self, it gives other people permission to also be the authentic self. And it's just like contagious and there's no shade or nothing. Like I remember one time, like I was being myself and someone was being themselves and they had like a character trait that I didn't really love, but I didn't care because it was like, oh, this person is being them and I'm so happy that they feel so empowered to live in their truth. And I'm going to live in my truth and I'm going to accept their difference. And hopefully, whatever it is they see in me, they accept my difference as well. So I think really just like giving myself that permission to be like, no one is stopping you. Like it is just you. Just show up as your best self and believe in that person. That feels like a major key for me when it comes to authenticity.
I last night I just started The Body Is Not an Apology by Auntie Sonia, and it's very in the very beginning, but she quoted somebody. I think it was a white person, so I don't remember the person's name. But they and was like we're quoting them and also critiquing what they said. But it was about nobody questions that what an almond is going to grow into, like a nut, right? And it grows into this huge tree. Nobody questions that. It's like that is what it's meant to do. That is the destiny. That's the purpose. Nobody questions it. And thinking about it in the sense of like Black women, Black bodies, right? And there's all this questioning that happens of like who you're supposed to be and what your purpose is, and all this questioning about, and then you internalize that and you think you got to do all these different things that aren't aligned with who you are at the core. And so we take so long to find that because we're combating everything else that society's telling us that we got to be, that we got to pursue, that we're supposed to be aligned with. And we spend our whole girlhood, our young adulthood chasing those dreams instead of what we were supposed to grow into that tree. Like that is who we are. The trees look different, but there's such a there's the attack, right? And this idea that these trees, like we don't accept those trees, right? Like you gotta fit into the forest. You're not allowed to be your unique self. You're not allowed to grow into that black womanhood that you know. And so I thought of that while you both were speaking in terms of that authenticity. Like a lot of times we know what it is that we want, and we just don't feel like we're safe enough to pursue that in our adulthood.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, I love that image metaphor. Like, I think that's so on point. Yeah.
Mhm. I want to talk about more specifically some of the work that you have. So, Maurisa, to start with you with the piece that is featured in Unwritten on the website, if you could talk a little bit about that piece, and then about that piece in particular, and the messaging, the inspiration behind it, but then also what is your, the larger inspiration for your work? Where do you draw your inspirations from? I know a lot of it comes from just lived experience, right? And interactions that you have with others. But what else goes into the inspiration behind the things that you end up putting on paper?
So that's a big question. um, I'll talk about the piece to the fuck girls at sea. So this poem is a poem that is really important to me because, I think that as a queer black woman, there's like this um attractiveness, and I think it exists for maybe like straight folks as well, but I can only speak for myself. There's like this attractiveness to like the fuck girl. It's like, that like they not a good person, or may not be a good person, or may not treat you good, maybe that's more accurate, but you're still like, oh, I want that, right? And I really wanted to, I was kind of interrogating with that piece, like, how does a fuck girl become a fuck girl, right? Like, what experiences in life allow them to get to where they are, and like, what is the true position behind that designation? I think when I was like thinking about it, I was calling it like a designation or a title, right? Like, is that like a shield? Is it a mask? Um, so that poem is really me thinking about, the speaker is thinking about their experiences with their father and how that led to behavior that influences their dating experiences, and kind of how they got to be a fuck girl with really like well-intended intentions. But also it's like, although you may figure out how you got here, you're still accountable,
Mm,
right? And I don't know if we are having a lot of conversation. I think maybe now, but I think when I wrote that piece, I don't know if we were having a lot of conversations in the queer community of like, what does it mean to like, yeah, like be hurt? That's a thing. But like also our actions have very big implications. And how do we take accountability for hurting other people without being like exiled from community? Um,
mhm,
Mm.
so that's kind of like what I was thinking about when I wrote that piece, and that's what came up. And I try my best to go to poems with questions, and hoping, and I'm not hoping that the poem will give me an answer, but this is just what I'm just hoping to like explore more. um so
Mhm.
yeah, check it out. I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking. Let me know when you check it out, kind of what you're thinking, and what comes to mind for you. um with my art, things that inspire me. So I'm leaning more and more into the fact that like I'm an artist. I call myself a writer, which is great, and I am, but I am also an artist. And when I look back at my trajectory and my childhood and my young adult period, like I used to paint, I used to do theater. Now I'm like into like aerial and pole, and I love like, like visual art. I love photography. um I love like graphic design and things like that. Like, these are all parts of who I am. I did playwriting, I did like all of these different things, visual arts, mosaics, all of these things. And I was just like, I'm at a point where how can I embrace all I am as an artist? So I think when I think about what inspires me, a lot of visual art is feeding me right now. Because right now my work is talking a lot about the body.
Mm.
And recently I got diagnosed with a chronic illness, and I was like, oh, how do I write about my body? And I find that like, oh, I don't have language fails me at this moment. Like I don't necessarily have the words to talk about this thing, but I can look at something and I'm like, oh,
Mm,
like you'd said it, right? Like through your colors, through your strokes, through your like collage, you said it. So right now, I'm really inspired by a lot of visual artists. Um, what else? I'm really inspired by animals as well, which is so like out of character for me. I'm not a big animal person. But I think it's a great way for me to like again, like how do I write about something that's happening in my body that doesn't feel human? That
mm,
feels like so other and so out of this world, right? Um, so that's what's inspiring me. I will say my inspiration changes, right? So a few years ago, I was writing a lot about being Black and being queer and like what did queerness mean. I mean, I've been queer for a really, really long time. And I know I've been queer for a really long time. My loved ones have known I've been queer for a really long time. And, you know, I'm so fortunate that they have been so open and loving and receptive towards me. So I began to write about that. But now I think I'm really writing about the body and writing a lot about shame and figuring out like what do we do with shame? What do we do with these experiences that we have with our body? Like once we have them, it's just like, okay, like now what? So hopefully that gives you some insight into like what's kind of springing me. But I watch a lot of TV. Like sometimes I watch a TV show or I read a book or like I go for a walk and I see these two little like swans that I love by my house. And I'm just like, like, how can I be like the swans? And I have a poem about like swans, you know, um, and love. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, it comes anywhere that I give my attention to, really.
mm. Christina, what about you? Where do you draw your inspiration from?
Listen, Maurisa be sending me, okay? I'll be like, wait, oh wait, we talking. Don't just listen and drift, Christina, to the place that she took you. Lord, I just be feeling like I need to sit. I just need to sit with the words.
We can watch it
Um,
over. We can watch it over, and we can.
okay. Ooh. Wow. Let's see. In terms of inspiration, I think it's simply put, is life, right? What I'm living through at the moment, what I'm witnessing others live through. Um, I feel like the poems that I've written most recently, one was for my daughter, and she just turned 1. And I was thinking about this full year of her life and just how much she's taught me, not necessarily the things that she's learned, because she's accomplished a lot, right? She learned how to walk and say stuff. She couldn't do that day one. But really how she's teaching me to have faith and how to trust that she's equipped with everything that she needs in this world already, right? And it's going to surface when she needs it. And then she's going to be protected and cared for, not just by me, right? Um, and so, that's a poem. Something else that has been coming up for me is just, you know, being honest with myself about where I am, personally, professionally, and kind of what I want from the world and what I expect from the world and what I think I deserve from the world. And that's starting to come out in my poetry. And so, I'm it's a lot of random things. It's a lot of random things. And Maurisa knows this. We're together for the performance that you invited us to, Simone. And, a conversation, just the phrase "you are art" came up, and a piece emerged from that, right? So just thinking about, like, as people, we ourselves are art, as Black people, we ourselves are art, and embracing and celebrating just that natural artistry by us just being who we are. That's inspiration. It really comes any and everywhere kind of for me. But really what I'm kind of living through is probably the most, salient at the time.
Yeah, I would love to know, I consider you a creative, Simone, like, and as someone who's not like necessarily like writing poetry, but like very creative, right? Curating experiences, curating art, curating like conversations. Like, where do you feel like your inspiration comes from in this moment?
Hmm. In this moment, I think it comes from you all, to be honest, is the creatives who are putting the content out there, right? Like the content is where my inspiration comes from, of how do I celebrate that content and the stories in that content. Because for me, it's not listening to a poem, looking at a painting, right? It's about the story behind it and what it says about that person that wrote it, that person that painted it, that put it together, whatever it might be, and in the practice and how all of those practices are rooted in where we've come from. So that there's like this historical timeline and narrative that I think education hasn't tapped on yet, right? So all of us here are educators in some capacity, and the field hasn't tapped into it. And I have learned so much. I have learned so much from content producers like yourselves who are putting out these stories in creative manners, and I'm learning from them. I've learned so much. And so I think that the inspiration is just, as an educator, how do I tap into that, right? As opposed to leaning on the things that have been traditionally valued in our educational systems. How do I create more space for poems, right? And for these stories that are telling more lived realities than what we see in the textbooks and what we see in these articles. It doesn't resonate with everyone. And so how do I utilize my positionality and my own inner work that I do in relation to the things that you put out there to create opportunities for others? Um, and then I also think about just, even with my business, of launching Anansi Creative Studio. And I was looking back before I launched. I was looking back. I found a notebook from when I was living in China, and it had Anansi in it, and I was just writing about it. And I was like, wait a minute, I've never thought about this before, but obviously I did, because there was a notebook filled with ideas that I was living in China. I wasn't thinking about launching a business or anything like that. And so I was just thinking about, as I said, like these things are already within us. They're already planted. Like the seeds are there. And so when I get to process through all of the works that Black people have created from way back when to now, and what I envision to be part of our future, it gives me life. Like that's fulfilling to me. And so that inspiration, it's like it's bringing all of my ancestors with me, like it's bringing my family with me. It's like, all right, we on this trip together, so that is inspiring to know that even when I'm curating these experiences and these conversations, it's not about me. It's really not about me. Like it's about the arts, it's about the stories, it's about creating space um to imagine differently, to imagine a world that's so different from what we are used to, because we really do deserve.
Yeah.
We
Mhm.
deserve. And so I think that that's where my inspiration is drawn from.
I love that.
I
Just
do
like
too.
retweet that whole thing.
Mm, that was beautiful and so real, like when I think about what I write and when I feel the most fulfillment and joy is when another person's like,
Mm,
I felt that. I can connect to that, right? Like writing is a way for me to connect to other people and to tap into that legacy, that history, my ancestry, my family, you know. when you tell stories, it's about connection. I want to know you. I want you to know me, where I'm from, who I'm from, my people.
Mm-hmm.
All of it comes through in the art. And, Simone, you taking the time and having the wisdom to recognize like this is something precious, this wealth that we have, in our community. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
We gotta tap in. We have to tap in. I would like to believe that there is a future where we're able to utilize these things to to educate young people. Like I can't believe that what we have now is what we're gonna have forever. I refuse to believe it. I can't.
Yeah, and I mean, I see art, I see poetry, and I really see like, I hate this word, but like, because it's not, but really alternative and untraditional ways to educate, right? But it isn't actually. That's just what I'll
Right.
use at this moment. But like, going out in nature teaches us so
Mm,
much, right? And I'm not talking about like, what was that class we took, like science or earth science or botany, you know what I'm saying? Whatever you took to get your little science credit. Um, but like I believe in experiential knowledge. Like how can students be experiencing things in their neighborhood, right? And that's also going to be a bigger issue of like if you don't got no garden in your neighborhood,
right.
right? Like why don't you have a garden in your neighborhood? Everyone should have a garden. Everyone should have access to see how Mother Earth works, access to fresh herbs, fresh food that grows from like their soil. And then that goes into like climate justice, like is the soil even like, so I think that there's so much to be done and there's so much possibility, and art is just like one leg of it, right? you know um I was with my niece this weekend, and when we went out, I was just teaching her so much because I was like, what you are learning in the classroom, that's one thing, right? But like, let's look at the architecture of the houses and how they look different in Queens and how they look different in Brooklyn. Let's look at the trees. My aunt had like mint in her yard. Let's taste mint, right? All of these different paths, like Shirley Chisholm State Park. Like, who is Shirley Chisholm? And these are all things that are like available in your neighborhood that doesn't have to like be in this one-dimensional textbook. So I definitely feel you. And I think of also like food as like another way to like teach and access culture and access like just so much. And I just wish that learning was a lot more fun sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Christina, I wanted to ask you, you had mentioned when you were submitting your stuff, you were having a conversation with a black woman and about how you physically, how black women physically bear the burdens of generational trauma. And you ended up writing a poem from that. And so obviously that conversation was inspiration for you. If you could just talk a little bit about that and also how you're thinking about that as a mother, right? Someone who has a 1 year old now. What is that processing looking like for you?
My goodness. Um, Thank you for asking that and giving me the opportunity to really think more about that moment. It was it was crazy, right? I'm sitting down, actually getting my hair done at the time, and I'm having a conversation, and we were actually talking about mothering, right? And in that, it's like, I have this condition now, but I firmly believe this is the woman speaking. I have this condition now, and I firmly believe like this is generations of trauma that have built up and manifested physically in my body. I feel like I'm bearing a burden that I shouldn't have to carry, right? This isn't just mine, you know. And she was thinking about her mother, and she's thinking about her mother's mother and all of this. And she's a mother of a daughter as well, right? And so she's like, I don't want to pass this on to my baby. And so as we were talking at the time, I didn't have any children, but what she said hit me so profoundly because it was beyond real, right? Like the physicality of trauma. If you honestly have any empathy in you at all, if you hear a story or you understand someone else's experience, you feel that. You feel that. And at the time, like, that poem just gripped me. I was like, I can't get up from this seat until I write this down. I have to pin this, because otherwise I was going to carry it with me out of the shop, and I was going to take it home, and I was just going to let it sit and stew within me. So, thinking about that time as a mother myself, every time I look at my daughter, I think about what I want to give her and what I don't want to give her. You know, um, I think about the things that I experienced as a child, and then I fast forward in my mind in her life, and I'm like, okay, when she's that age, this is what we're gonna have to look out for, because I want to make sure she doesn't experience that, or she doesn't have to, get the lesson the way I did. Um, and it's constant. It's constant, to the point where I have to actually pause and tell myself to stop and let her be a baby. Like, she's 1 year old, and you are planning for what you need to tell her when she's 15 and when she's 30 and when you know what I mean? So I feel like it's a battle. It's a battle inside of me all the time. The tension between just experiencing and being healed by her joy, and also thinking a lot about how to protect it for as long as I possibly can. So I don't know if that answers anything. That was what I'm feeling.
Absolutely, absolutely. That was deep. That was deep. And I do think, conversations, as Marissa and I are not mothers, but I think we can all agree that conversations where we're thinking about, future generations, particularly when it's someone who you have birthed yourself, right, is so vulnerable. And so I definitely want to extend my gratitude for you even talking about that in such a vulnerable way, because it's personal. Like, that's someone that you carried, and now you have to think about what that means for the future, and you are always going to look back at yourself and say, what could I have done differently, right? Like, that's that, especially as Black women, right? And carrying that around and feeling like, what could I have done differently, or what did I do that was wrong in the process? And I'm hopeful that we can let that go as we find more freedom within our Black womanhood, that we don't have to carry that so heavily.
Mm, yes. I just remembered the poem is called Womb Song.
Mm.
And we have so much in our womb, right? Just so much power, right? To create, to extend life, all of that. But just also, like, that idea of what we carry, your womb carries. Yeah, some stuff that we absolutely shouldn't. So I feel you completely, Simone. Yeah, I hope there is a time we could let go and be free, and not worry about what we're carrying, what we have to hold.
Yeah, yeah. So I wanna wrap us up, but I have one more question for the both of you. And I would love for you to just share how you've seen yourself evolve over the years. So, since you've kind of started your artistic journey, how would you describe your evolving nature? Like, what did that path and journey look like for you, and how would you give advice to someone, particularly a Black woman perhaps, right, who is just getting started on their artistic journey? What do you want them to know or believe or feel in relation to your own journey?
So, advice to another Black woman who is an artist or aspiring artist from our journeys.
Or even, let me take that back because I'm trying to make sure that I am I'm not prescribing this really traditional notion of what an artist is. So any black woman, because we all have artistic and creative
Mhm.
methodologies within us, like it's part of who we are. So not even someone who calls themselves an artist, but just a black woman who's tapping into her creative potential and the ways in which she navigates the world naturally and owning it. What would you want to say to her?
Mm. I guess for me, I would start, you know, piggybacking off of something that Maurisa shared earlier about that call, right? And answering that call, um, not to be afraid of it, right? Um, I think that reflecting on my own journey in that, you know, 7 years or so where I was not writing, where I was not actively answering that call that I have toward poetry, I think there was fear in me. Um, Fear about, can I call myself a poet?
Mm.
Is this is this really what people would consider to be poetry? Like these lines that I'm writing, these things that I'm feeling. You know, does anybody care about this? Um, and if they don't care, do I need to do it? And I think that that held me back for a long time, and to the point where when I did release it, it's overflowing. It's almost overwhelming. All the things that have been stored up inside of me that came out when I allowed myself to just really answer that call, um, and be honest that it didn't matter, what anyone else thought or what I'm formally trained to do or not. This is what has to get out of me. um, and that's how I feel as I'm writing. Like there's a urgency. Like there's things that I let go by that I don't finish, but it's rarely a poem. Rarely. Like if once it gets started inside of me and it's like, oh no, you have to get this out, I want to see it to the end. So, you know, for any other person out there who has that burn, that fire in you, that passion, that love, don't be afraid of it, let it out.
I love that, Christina. I think what I would say, I realize that like there, everything I say is like in a gray area, right? So like everything I say I could also not say, or I could say, actually, that's not true, right? So I'll say this, but like there's always an exception. Um, but I think to any like creatives or aspiring creatives, I would just say create, 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 even when no one is watching. That's my thing. I was like, if I say I'm a writer, like, am I writing only when people are watching? Am I writing only for publication? Am I writing only for shows? Or am I doing this like as often as I feel like I can safely? Right. Um, because this is an important life practice to me. Right. So if your thing is like collaging, do that. No one has to see it. No one, you don't have to put it out into the world. There's a lot of things that are in this running Google Doc that I have that I do not ever plan to like show the world, but I just show up and I write a few words. Um, because writing is an important practice to me. It's a muscle and we flex it. So whatever your muscle is, I would just say flex it so that you can get in the practice of like creating. Because if we are living on the same planet and in the same system, we have been trained to like turn off our creativity. So it's literally a muscle, a practice that you have to let your body do again. Like I finally feel like I'm getting to a place in my art where my brain is like doing some really wild stuff. And I'm like, oh, that's super funky. And I'm like, yes, this is cool. I bet before I couldn't even get to this space. So I would say just like create, create, create. And then I think a lot of times when people think of creators, they think like, oh, you're like especially writers, you're like in a closet writing by yourself with like a little candle. And, I would never forget Dr. Abagunde at Indiana University, and a lot of the poets and teachers that I grew up with in New York City would tell me like, no, for Black, Indigenous people of color, like this craft is a collective craft. This art is collective. It is not isolating. It doesn't have to be isolating. So whatever, and I think that that is applicable to a lot of things. So although like I write alone, I may have like a writing session with someone over Zoom, right? Or we may meet up in person and do some writing and exchange work or just talk about what we're writing. But I would say find people, because art can get so in here and in your body, and it can feel lonely sometimes, but it doesn't have to be. So find people so that they can hold you accountable, they can affirm you when you're wondering who you are. That is something that I'm always trying to do, is like find other creatives, other writers who I feel like can see me and I can see them. Nikki Finney says in this talk at the MFA at the New School, she's talking about a conversation or an encounter she had with Nikki Giovanni when Nikki Giovanni sent some of her work back to her. And Nikki Finney is like, you know, academic programs, particularly she's talking about MFAs, are like really great, but she said there are people. You need people in your life, like human beings. And I'm paraphrasing, but like who are going to like hold you accountable and show up for you. And they're going to be the people where like, if you say you're going to be a writer, they're going to make sure you're going to be a writer. You know what I'm saying? So you need those people that's like, if you say you're going to be a creative and whatever that is, they're going to be the people to like hold you accountable. So I would just say create and find community.
Yes. Thank you both. Thank you both for that. Um, so we're gonna end it out with our little affirmation manifestation prompts. And so how this is gonna work is I'm going to say the beginning of the prompt, and you're going to finish it. So you'll repeat what I said, and then you'll finish it based on whatever you're feeling at the moment, whatever's in your heart. So there's 5 of them. It's very short, but it allows us to just ground ourselves as we come to the end of the conversation. So the first one is, and this is leaning into the I, so all of them start with I. Okay. So the first one is, I find strength in.
I find strength in my breath.
I find strength in my people.
Yeah. The next one is, I am struggling with blank.
I am struggling with rest. I have insomnia and it's driving me nuts.
That's real.
I am struggling with man, it's one thing, right?
One thing.
Okay. Oh,
Can be more if you're feeling called to share more.
no. Honestly, yeah, I want to put a period after I am struggling. Just that. Yeah, it's.
Yeah. All right. The next one is, I feel renewed when.
I feel renewed when I look at my daughter.
I feel renewed when I'm by bodies of water.
I love Black women because.
I think I'll follow after Christina and just say I love Black women because, period. Like just because. No particular reason, but just because.
Yeah. Period. Too many reasons. Let me count the ways.
All right. And the last one is so you're gonna direct this at the other person. So when you say it, you'll say Maurisa, you would say Christina, Christina, you would say Maurisa. So you're gonna say, I see you, Christina or Maurisa, and I offer you these words and whatever you would like to say to the other person.
Hmm, let me think. I'll go. I see you, Maurisa, and I offer you these words. You are beyond. You are beyond your mind, your spirit, everything that you offer this world. It is beyond, and it is incredible and beautiful. And I feel honored to be able to witness that and to be able to experience it for myself. You're a force. And yeah, I have so much love for you, all of you.
Thank you so much, Christina. I see you, Christina, and I offer you these words. This is just a season, all things that come will go. And I think it was so funny that you were talking about Simone's plants because I was texting a friend and she was just like, we're all like plants. And I think about like some plants do better in like certain like climates. And I think these past year and this moment is just like a really hard climate for everyone. And I'm just so grateful for every conversation that I have with you. Um, you're always so authentic, you're always so warm, and you just light up a room and really make space for people to just like show up. You're so mindful and so attentive. Um, and I hope that whatever this season is bringing for you, that it comes and it gives you what it has to give you, and then the abundance that's yours is available to claim, because it's already like has your name on it, right? So I'm just so grateful to have met you and to be in conversation and now have you in this community of like artists, Black women creatives. And I know that, we'll speak again and then this won't be our last.
Thank you. Man, I'm over here misty. Real talk. Fighting them back. I was like, woo. Timely. See? Beyond. Okay.
Simone,
Thank you.
this conversation together, you know, we see you as well and just so grateful for all of your leadership and creative energy.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, girl.
For the vision.
That's the word, the vision.
Thank you, thank you. And I appreciate y'all so much for the trust. I say this every time because I know that it takes a lot of trust to have these conversations. And so I cannot thank you all enough for having that trust in me to, be asking these deep, deep questions. And we and we're like, let's do it. So that to me is so special that I get the opportunity to do that with you all. That's irreplaceable. So I'm so grateful. And I hope this gave you what you need at the moment and it continues to give as you move forward in this May season. I don't know what May has to bring, but I hope it's good. I hope it's good. Well, thank you everyone for watching. Please be sure to check out Maurisa's piece as mentioned on reimagineproject.com. Christina, if you want to submit something, you are most certainly welcome to do so. I would love to have you featured on there. Um, and everyone that's watching, please make sure that you are following these lovely individuals, they're changing the world, right? Little steps at a time. And so we're doing it collectively, but it also takes the individual strength and the individual passion, and that's what we have here. So thank you everyone, and we will see you at the next unscripted session.
Thank you.